Thank you for meeting with us today. Today is February 11th, and my name is Katie Delk. I'm with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and we're also here with my colleague,
Donovan Carter.
And
Leslie Bram.
Yes, thank you. So we appreciate you being here with us.
Sure.
Thank you. We'll be saying that a lot. But yeah, we'd just like to start by hearing about your life here at the Oral History Program. We'd like to hear about from the time you were born. So if you could just start by saying where you were born, where you're from, if you want to talk about your family a bit as well.
Okay. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. My father was the director of a Jewish nursing home, so I grew up in the industry of Okamic. And I don't know what to tell you about my childhood. I had an ideal childhood. I did not have a dysfunctional family. I went to Carnegie Mellon as an undergraduate. Then I went to Northeastern in Boston and got a master's degree in English. And then I went to the University of Pennsylvania Law School. And I was a lawyer in private practice in Philadelphia in a large law firm for 4 years. That was an experience for your oral history another day. And then my husband and I moved to Chapel. Well, we were in Philadelphia for 8 years. Then we moved to Chapel Hill. And I became an assistant to the vice president for development, and used my estate tax work, planning, which was my background, to do fundraising. And then we moved to Gainesville. And we've been here 34 years. And he's on the faculty, and I was the COO and the associate vice president at the foundation, and ran the business affairs of the foundation.
Thank you for sharing. I know Donovan wants to go to law school, so I'm sure he relates to that aspect. I don't know if you want to say anything, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting that you grew up around the Jewish nursing home. So how do you think that early exposure to, as you said, the industry influenced your path here to Okamic?
Well, I don't live here. You know, I'm on the board of directors.
Right.
When President John Lombardi put together a team to consider the idea of Okamic, although it didn't have a name then, because he knew my background and personally, he just knew it. He put me on the team, and it was mostly doctors. And once they realized that they were not going to make any money out of Okamic, they dropped out, and I was the last man standing. And happily took over the charge of the committee to build and design Okamic. And we spent a good 8 years working on it about half-time. Had a full-time job and then a half-time Okamic. And it's an act of love. It was an act of love by everybody involved. I don't know what you want to hear about the history. And I could bore you to death for 5 or 6 hours.
We can tell you that you will not bore us. We are very interested to hear the history, so whatever you feel is important to share. But I think what you mentioned that you all had another full-time job at the time. How did you balance the two, and what was the other job?
The other job was being the COO of the foundation.
Right.
And which is more than a full-time job. And what we did is we all worked really hard. The committee ended up to be a couple of deans, the dean of nursing, the dean of public health and human performance, a couple of faculty members, a couple of other business people in the community. And John Lombardi gave us this charge. Don't do it unless you build it first class, and don't spend any university money on it. And that's what we did. And we did it through support and love from a number of university donors. That courtyard out there is named for Frank Duckworth, and he gave us the original $300,000 to do the feasibility study. He was general counsel at a pharmaceutical company for his career and lived in Washington, and he thought a retirement community here would be a really great thing. So he was part of the vision. And as we moved along, we were an organization that had a big dream. I mean, was an expensive place to build, and no money. And so we got some help from another university donor, from the late Jerry Davis, who, I love this story now. He was president of my board, the foundation board at that point. And we didn't have any background, any credit. We didn't have anything. And he signed a $5 million bank loan for us so we could get up and start marketing. And it was a miracle. So university donors had a lot to do with this creation. And the CCRC bonds, which are issued to build these facilities, have to be 80%, well, the units in the facility have to be 80% pre-sold before you can issue the bonds. So, there's nothing here, there are no buildings. You just bring people out and say, it's going to be beautiful, trust us. And so we had a marketing office in town, and we did that. We had a sales staff, and when we hit it, we issued $125 million of bonds and began construction. And one of the things I think that was very special about it is we had on our board of directors local community business people and builders, but we also had deans and faculty members who had expertise in a lot of these areas, and we wanted it to be world class. So, we had the Dean of Architecture participating in what the design should look like, and we had PHHP designing the rec room, and the College of Public Health and Health Performance runs and staffs the gym with their students who do, they're the trainers. And we consulted with nursing, we consulted with, we consulted, John Lombardi went with me to talk to every college and unit on campus. He was an amazing visionary person. And we were about to do our last meeting, which was with the College of Veterinary Medicine. And I was like, what could they have to do with this? And they were wonderful. They said, why don't we have a mobile clinic? And they still do. They come every week with a mobile clinic, vet med students, and do wellness checks in their little mobile units, which is amazing. So originally the thought was to tie the university and its students very closely with this. These are programs like, you can't graduate with a degree in gerontology and how to do fitness for older people, but here you can do that. You can get, that experience. So we thought there were a lot of intellectual synergies between the university and the program, and it also depended on the community that we got. And I think if you look at the data, this is probably per capita the most PhDs of any place in the world just living here. there are still a lot of active faculty members living here who are still teaching. And then there are, I don't know, 4 or 5 retired deans and their spouses, and a lot of donors, university donors. We thought that it would be filled primarily with university alumni. When we opened our doors, that was not the case. It was about 50%. A lot of the Gainesville community, but also the state of Florida. People have come from all over. We've had people from Alaska, people from Hawaii.
Wow.
Healthcare is very expensive in Hawaii. And one of them is an alum, one isn't. But at the time that we opened, we were the only university-related continuing care community with an active continuing education program. And it's still, there aren't many, which is a shame. There should be more. But the building industry underestimated the baby boomers and what they wanted to do. And now it's coming to a head. I mean, my husband and I are 70, and our friends are all 70, and there aren't enough facilities for people to go to that they're willing to go to. None of us is willing to go into an old-fashioned skilled nursing unit. We would move here. We will move here. But there aren't enough of these facilities in the country, and that's a real shame, and there's going to be a lot of catch-up going on. We had a real advantage of having a world-class hospital, and they participated in our projects and drawing up things, and it's been a great community effort. Go ahead.
That's good. So you stated that there aren't a lot of places like Okamic. So what in your mind makes Okamic so special? Like, what makes it unique, as you say?
Well, we set out to get a younger community, which we did. The average entrance age to a CCRC is about 79, and the average entrance age here is about 73. But we originally had a younger community, and now they've aged in place, so they're not so young anymore. But it's the Institute for Learning in Retirement that is run here, which is not run exclusively for Okamic, but anybody in the community can join it. But there are lectures here every single day and performances by students, musical students, theater students, whatever here. The idea was that these people are smart and energetic and still very interested in the world, and we provide that. And that is what is unique about it.
Wow. Thank you.
So it sounds like a very holistic project or facility, like you say, and, with a lot of intersecting parts from the university, including the veterinary school, which is really interesting. From the inception of Okamic, was that the goal, to really incorporate the university as much as possible? I know you mentioned, spending time with every unit you could.
Right. Yes. And it took a lot longer than a normal just construction project would take because, we had to consult with experts all over campus on things like bathrooms and showers and what is the state of the art for nurses' stations. And we tried to get the best and most up-to-date modern language ideas that we could. We couldn't afford to include them all, but we included a lot of them. The one that we all laugh about is the swimming pool. The Dean of Public Health and Health Professions, who was on the board, a dear friend of mine, he was a swimmer as an undergraduate at New Mexico. And he insisted that you cannot swim laps in a warm pool. You have to have a lap pool, which is a different temperature from an aerobics pool. So I think we were the first facility to ever have 2 pools. It was quite an indulgence. It was very expensive to put the second pool in. Now, honestly, I don't know how much it is used, but that's sort of what this was like. I mean, we have massage rooms. We have, in the gym, there are certain floors put in for Pilates and for aerobic exercise, and the college ordered all of the machines and the equipment in the gym, so that's pretty amazing. The dental hygienist, the dental school, opened a little office here, state-of-the-art dental school, and you can see it's down the hall, and they have people come once a week, and nobody here has to use them, but if they want to use them, it's here. And we have a whole team of health professionals who come from outside, some from the UF and some not.
Well, yeah, I love that you shared the pool example. I was going to ask you do you have any other ideas that you felt, were up to date based on the guidance of University of Florida professors or researchers? Any other interesting ones? I know you mentioned showers and...
Yeah, well, we spent a whole day as a board of directors talking about showers in assisted living units. The assisted living is when you need some day-to-day care. And the state-of-the-art at that point in time was communal bathing, down the hall, a bathroom, a shower. People would walk down the hall. All of our assisted living units have a shower. We decided that was very important to stay independent. And so that was, something we learned about and we got from our faculty. So that was a good thing. We also thought we had a state-of-the-art memory support unit. It turns out it wasn't by the time we opened. It's being redone right now. We went all over to find everything that everybody was doing. And I mean, the healthcare industry changes so fast. And, this was 20 years ago. And what our generation wants is different from what your generation is going to want. And so we built houses. I don't know if you drove around, but they're lovely houses and beautiful apartments. And when we opened, we couldn't give away a house. Nobody wanted a house. Now they're all sold, and there's like a 3-year waiting list. So every generation has a different idea. At the time that we were exploring this, physical fitness was not a priority of the generation before these residents. And so you'd go to a facility to look at it, and it would have like a room with 3 machines in it or something. We built a huge gym because that's what this group wanted. Who knows what the next group will want? I mean, the board of directors is doing strategic planning right now to try and figure that out. We know that our memory support unit needs to be gutted and redone, set up differently. My father-in-law was here in the memory support unit for a very short time at the end of his life, and it was hilarious because he's so smart and he was professional, and he was what they call a wanderer. And he would look over the nurse's shoulders and memorize the keypad numbers so he could escape. And we had a couple of really exciting emergency, where's John? It was kind of embarrassing, but there it is. So, the stories, there are hundreds and hundreds of stories about people who put special touches in this place. The one thing that we learned going around to other facilities, the board traveled a lot. We went and looked at probably about 20 facilities in the country, is that food, you'll never be able to make everybody happy with the food. And the food here, I will tell you, is excellent. But it's still not probably your mother's meatloaf, which is what you want when you order meatloaf. And it's impossible to make meatloaf for 400 people. Everybody wants their mom's meatloaf. And so those kinds of things are tough. And even if you ate in your favorite restaurant every day, you get sick of it. So it takes a lot of extra creativity and attention to get the food service right. During COVID, which has been so terrible, and in communities like this, they closed all the dining rooms and delivered food to everybody at their house or their apartment which in itself was a yeoman's task. They haven't even reopened the dining room. The lunchroom is just opened, I think, this week. But we spent a huge amount of time as a board talking about different facilities. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. What would make people feel like they were eating in different places, different spaces, not to be bored. People here have a dining account, a monthly dining account. You're getting me, this is great.
No worries.
Like a country club would have, and it's very generous, and hardly anybody uses it up. But you can have meals delivered to your home. You can throw a dinner party. I could reserve this room and have a dinner party here. As much flexibility as you want, and each of the eating facilities has, oh, for heaven's sakes.
Okay.
Keep going.
Except that I'm hiccuping.
Sorry about that.
So they built in as much flexibility as possible. There's a bar right over here that opens every afternoon at 3:30. And there are lots of activity rooms, and some of them are used 24/7, and some of them are not used. I mean, they were mistakes. We've made a number of mistakes. So embarrassing. The library space was not sufficient. We should have realized, we were asking for type A, very educated people to move in here. And they all have a lot of books. So when they, close out their houses, our library was filled in like 20 seconds. But they have access to books to be delivered from the UF libraries here as well. They can use all the facilities on campus. They carry Gator 1 cards like you do.
Oh, that's neat.
And so they can use rights union facilities, and I don't think too many of them do. They probably use the golf course. Excuse me. But that was something we learned along the way about whether we were going to build a golf course or not. And it turns out that playing golf into your later years is easier than playing tennis because of the hip movements. And so we built a tennis court, but they used the university golf course. And so, we tried to leverage as many of the university facilities as we could. And that has worked pretty well, I think.
Well, I appreciate you talking about, both the successes and some failures and growing spaces. One of the ones I want to go back to is the memory support that you've mentioned. So what are some ways that you're discussing developing that program more?
I'm not really an expert on this, and so I have to sort of punt a little bit on that question.
That's okay.
But we thought we were building state-of-the-art, and it just hasn't worked out. People are unhappy in them, and the space is too small. It's a lock unit. So, if you're in it, you're locked into a small unit. You still need that. People wander, it's dangerous. Memory support is a big issue. We're converting right now 6 of our memory support rooms into, this is ridiculous, I've never had the hiccups like this before, into assisted living. And so there are a number of skilled nursing beds that are set aside for memory support issues, and now we'll have assisted living units for people who only need a little help instead of a lockdown unit.
And it sounds like you're very in touch with the residents' opinions, realizing that they probably spend more time at the golf course than the tennis court.
Right.
So do you often try to talk to people, or do they reach out to you?
I just came from a 2-hour residence council meeting. Okay. As a member of the board. I'm assigned we send someone to every meeting. we hold a lot of receptions and things with them so that we can, get to talk. And a lot of us know the residents. They're our former colleagues and neighbors, and we know a lot of the people in here. So there's no shortage of free expression, shall we say. Everyone has an opinion about something, even just put the food aside, they have an opinion. At this meeting this morning, they moved at the request of the marketing people. When someone passed away in the facility, they would put their photo up in the lobby.
Right.
The marketing people thought that was too depressing for people coming in, and so they moved it around the corner, and people were irate. They felt it was disrespectful, and they wanted to mourn their friends, and so they're moving it back. So,
okay.
Yeah, people, they express a lot of opinions. This is one of those things that, be careful what you ask for. We wanted a lot of type A, highly educated people, and that's what we got. And they have a lot of opinions.
Well, it's very interesting that you listen to those, like you said, and allow the free expression so that you can implement the changes. But I'm interested in your focus area on the type A intellectual folks. Do you think that's just because of the proximity to the university? Where does that ideal come from?
I think it came from the people who created it were all that way. They were all deans and PhDs, and we built what we wanted to live in. And, we wanted to build something with great synergy with the university. We wanted students to be in here regularly. And we do the continuing education. So a lot of the people, the residents here, teach some of those courses. You have fantastic faculty members living here, and they can teach a course on Balkan history as well as anybody else. And so, if you look at the calendar, you should get the calendar of events. It's incredible. There are Spanish lessons, German lessons, opera training, not opera training, but if you look down the hall, they have an art gallery. You can just see a few of the things on the wall there. And that is always filled with people doing artwork, which is wonderful.
That's amazing.
Right now, it's photography. There are so many creative and clever people who live here, talented. So it's great. It's really a great place.
That's really amazing, the focus on learning here. Can you talk more about the significance of that? I think the ILLR sounds like one of the baseline significant projects from the beginning. And why did you want to offer that learning space? Why do you think it's important?
Well, finally it stopped. We started the ALR while we started marketing, so that people in the community who were interested, older, over 55, who wanted to do any kind of continuing education, we started and became very active in the community in the 2 or 3 years that we were selling units and getting ready to build. Obviously, a lot of people who moved in here were in the Institute for Learning and Retirement. You could see a trend, and you can see lots of trends now looking around the world, but there are all kinds of travel tours and educational travel tours for older people. People don't just want to sit and knit. This is not a generation, first of all, we're healthier than generations before us, and we have access to world-class health care. We're going to be living longer, and I don't play bridge. It's not like, a lot of nursing homes, people play bridge, and they do play it here too, but they also all go to classes, and it's very exciting because people are really interested, and it's very dynamic, and they come up with great ideas, and the art has been an astonishment to me. There are really talented artists living here, and some of the art shows are incredible. This is a photography show that's beautiful. It's a black and white photograph of everybody who wanted to be photographed, and they're beautiful. I don't know who did it. I don't know who the photographer was, but I just looked at it before I came in here. there are painting classes, and there, as I said, opera appreciation classes. I mean, there's everything that you could really think of, or anything you want, you could ask. And if somebody wants to teach it, or somebody is willing to put it together from Santa Fe or UF or whoever, we have a lot of UF faculty and Santa Fe faculty coming here to teach things.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like, such a stimulating place for older people to live.
It is meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you just mentioned that some Santa Fe professors teach here as well. So do you think that college is also involved here? And what's their involvement like?
They're working on getting more involvement from Santa Fe. They have, I think, nursing students and other kinds of students that they're working on having come through here. I mean, this is an incredible place to do an internship for students in pharmacy, in nursing. I mean, UF has everything you could ever want except a social work school. And there really is every discipline that you can think of. UF is one of the biggest universities in the world. And, its ag programs are bigger than most universities. Mm-hmm. We have master gardener classes from IFAS, and they put their gardens down on the side, victory gardens. Places you wouldn't even think would be interested, but they are. Everybody wants to participate in this.
So you see a lot of involvement from the residents?
Not from the residents, from the community.
Oh, right.
The community coming in here. From the residents, yes. They're all a very active and frisky group.
I love that adjective. So I know you mentioned, some growing places like we talked about earlier. But just in the beginning of Okamic, did you feel that there was any pushback at all? Any challenges when you were first starting? I know you mentioned you didn't have credit, so that sounded like the financial aspect sounded hard.
The financial aspects were very, very hard. The politics of it was, it's expensive to live here. And so this wasn't for an English department secretary. It's not accessible. The only way to build it was to make it for wealthier people. And one of the lovely things about that is that the development officers at UF all come here, and millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars, have been given by the residents of Okamic to the University of Florida. That was our plan, but we just didn't know if it was going to work. And that's been astonishing. But you think about one thing, like a woman I met early on, one of the early residents, there's no privacy here, she's from New Jersey. She was a single woman. She had no prior affiliation with the University of Florida at all. But she raised and groomed and raised horses. Well, UF has an unbelievable equine hospital and vet school. If you've never seen the vet school hospitals, equine hospitals, you need to go and see them. They're amazing. She works there, she teaches there. I don't know if she works there, but she volunteers there and goes there and shares what she knows. And, that's great for her, great for us.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And some of the things that happened, there was a woman who, I think she has since passed away, but she and her partner moved in here from Coral Springs from down in Miami. And she was a pediatrician before there were women pediatricians. She was like a long time pediatrician. And her avocation was growing orchids. She had a huge greenhouse in her backyard in South Florida. She moved all her orchids up to IFAS. It was a fantastic gift for them. They have a whole greenhouse now of orchids. Things you just wouldn't figure out ahead of time that happen. Lots and lots of things like that. There are, as I said, lots of artistic people. There's lots of great art in these homes here that many of us hope That's the former dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Not Arts and Sciences, Fine Arts, and his wife.
Oh, wow. Speaking of art.
Yeah. He's a musician. And
like you said, great artists here.
you know, and they get their students to come and perform, because who wants to go listen to a clarinet recital? Well, people here have their calendars are open. I mean, they're, interested in everything. And so
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it is great. And of course, they do athletics. I mean, one of the things you'll notice if you go around campus is that the Okamic bus is at every sports event. And it really pisses me off at basketball, because they pull right up to the gate. And they can go, wherever they want. They can leave quickly. So there are lots and lots of people here involved in athletics. And in the sports, the women's sports, the things that people maybe weren't so involved in. And so yeah, the Performing Arts Center, the Okamic bus pulls up to every performance, takes people, drops them off, picks them up. So it's the University of Florida is a very enriching university. You're lucky to be students there. You probably take advantage of like 1/10 of what's available on campus. But
That's fair.
but these people are all hungry for this stuff. And so the performances are a wonderful thing for people. And people use the kilns in the Rights Union, in the crafts rooms. And they're just very involved.
That's great to hear their involvement with the community. And
they're also volunteer with other local charities as well. There's a lot of volunteerism here.
Right. So even outside the scope
Outside of the university, yeah.
That's great. I know you mentioned too a little bit ago that, because the living is expensive, typically wealthy people live here. Is there any way that Okamic tries to make it more accessible, or is that a priority or at all?
It's a good question. The Internal Revenue Service deems a CCRC like this to be a 501c3 tax-deductible organization if they have a benevolent fund that will supplement people so that if they run out of money, they don't get kicked out. And now, they may start out wealthy, but the market is wild, and who knows what they need in healthcare. And there are probably 3 or 4 people here. It's all very confidential. We have no idea whose fees are being paid by the benevolent fund. So no, it's not for poor people. What we did when we were marketing is we put maybe about 5 or 6 one-bedroom studios in, so that there was something less expensive and accessible. It's still expensive. This is not a place to be poor, sadly. And I had to talk about that in public a lot. And, the thing is, it had to be self-sustaining. And so this is the business model that worked to make it work.
Okay, well, thanks for talking about that. I was interested. And also, so it sounds like I'm curious if Okamic is, similar to what you initially imagined in any way.
Well, we initially hoped to have an amazing community of people, which we have. And we left a lot of the development of the practices here to the community to develop themselves. Like, we didn't want to say you have to wear a jacket for dinner on Sunday evening, or we didn't make any of those rules. We let the community develop themselves. There's a very active residence council. They do those kinds of things. They are very vocal. And, so it's better than anything I ever envisioned, I have to say. We're pretty proud of it. As I said, but some things are no longer state-of-the-art, and it needs renovations, it needs strategic plans, it needs some growth plans. Everything is sold out. There might be one apartment, somebody died yesterday, but there are no the houses are completely gone. The apartments are completely gone. There's a very long waiting list.
Oh, wow.
And that's very frustrating to a lot of people who are coming to it a little late.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we talked it up a lot when it opened, of course, and I kept telling people, get on the waiting list. It's a fully refundable $1,500 or something, whatever it is. Just get on the waiting list. And some people did, some people didn't, and the waiting list is long. They're never going to be able to accommodate everybody on the waiting list unless there's a plague, really. And COVID is close, to that, and it didn't happen. So.
Yeah, I want to ask you about COVID. I know you said it affects places like this a lot. We saw earlier the last interviewee, once they saw someone and the person took off their mask, like, oh, now I know who you are.
Right. It's so hard to see these people when you're covered up with a mask. Yeah.
How do you think that's impacted Okamic?
Well, fortunately, it hasn't really impacted the business of Okamic. It has impacted, obviously, new people coming in who don't know people. I mean, if you can't eat together in the dining room, you're not going to meet new people.
Right.
And that's been hard. I think the residents' committees have tried to, get neighborhoods together and have some, but honestly, people haven't wanted to get together with COVID. I mean, it's too scary. And when you're older, that's a scary disease.
Right.
And so, people like me, I'm insulin-dependent diabetic. I didn't really do much of anything for 2 years. I mean, it's been a real bore. It has. I mean, you can't imagine.
My grandmother's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother's the same way. She's insulin-dependent diabetic, and she's been in the house a lot, doing a lot of reading. So.
Yeah. Well, I've read, till my head is spinning. And we have a condo down in Jupiter where our grandchildren are. And so we go down there about halftime, and we have, our bubble includes our grandchildren who are not vaccinated and our children. And they're not old enough to be vaccinated, hopefully soon. But, we have seen almost none of our friends. I mean, we talk, we email, but we've been locked in the house for 2 years. Yeah, because I'm particularly vulnerable as a diabetic, and my husband just had shoulder surgery. He fell off his bike and dislocated his shoulder, and let me tell you how much that hurt.
That's terrible.
It's terrible. So he just had shoulder surgery last week up here at Shands, and you're just locked in your house. That's it. So it's kind of a drag.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that. I'm sure it's been hard for residents, but it seems like you said, like the lunchroom's opening up, there's classes happening. It does feel a bit more lively.
They're reopening the eating venues. They've reopened the gym. Things are limited. I think class sizes are limited and whatever, but it's been a very tough couple of years for any kind of medical facility.
Oh yeah, for sure. And just a bit of a digression. I'm curious if there's a dependence on technology for the residents. Like when they sign up for classes, do they have to know how to do that online?
Well, yeah, it happens online.
And is that? I mean, like you said, everyone here is very intellectual. Is that ever an issue?
Well, they'll teach somebody if you need to have access. I mean, it's pretty hard even to be 80 these days and not use email.
That's fair.
So, yeah, they do a lot of online stuff. We anticipated that they might do more, but that hasn't happened. But they post the menus from the dining rooms, and they post activities every day online and that kind of stuff. So they use it a lot, just not as much as we sort of thought they might.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, you said earlier, that Okamic is unique, like Donovan asked you about. There aren't a lot of facilities like it. So can you just talk more about what makes it special, why the project is so important to you as one of the initial founders?
Well, it was a great big dream, and we did it. That's why it's special. We did it with very difficult odds, like no money, we had to cut back on things. We ran out of money a bunch of times. A good example of that is that we put much more money into the common spaces than we did into the individual living spaces. Because the hallmark of a vibrant community is people out walking around, being here, and you want them to have good lighting, you want them to have comfortable furniture, all of that kind of stuff. And as a result, we put kind of, I don't want to say junky, less expensive vinyl into the homes. And a lot of these people didn't want that, so we allowed them to spend their own money and, put it in. And if they wanted granite countertops in the kitchen, so be it. Now, it doesn't belong to them, so when the next person moves into that apartment, they get a bonus of having a granite, countertop. One of the other things that we learned while we were out on the road, and this is so true, women more than men, but women really want a bigger kitchen than they need in this facility, because their food is going to be available if they want it. They don't have to eat in the dining room. It can come to their door. And what everybody says that you talk to along the way is, we never use our kitchen. But they still might have granite countertops, and they still might have a fancier Sub-Zero refrigerator if they want to put it in. It just doesn't go with them when they leave. And so, those are careful financial decisions people have to make.
That's interesting. What other things have you learned along the way while working here?
Well, as I said, I grew up in the nursing home industry, so this is a pretty familiar environment to me.
Right.
We grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, lots of snow. When the staff couldn't get into work, my brothers and I worked, so I've worked in the kitchen, I've worked in, whatever. I don't think there have been really big surprises, just nice surprises about how vibrant this group of people is.
Well, that's good to hear that you found good surprises. And you said that this place is a labor of love for you. So, where do you think that love comes partially from childhood? And I mean,
I think it does. I think it came from, my father was a very special person, and he really was a pioneer in the senior living industry, and he created one of the first assisted living units, one of the, all those kinds of things. And I like to laugh. When we were kids, we would travel around the country and we'd visit nursing homes, because wherever we went, my dad wanted to see a nursing home. And there are hand railings that my father developed that are everywhere, all over the country.
Wow.
They're here too, but they're wider and they help you be steadier if you're holding onto them. They're like my daddy's handrails, But it started as a skilled nursing facility, and so people were sick, they were in beds, there wasn't a lot of activity, and over time my father developed lots and lots of things to improve that, and so I have a very strong appreciation of the value of what something like this provides.
That's really special.
And I hope to live here. We almost moved in this year. We were looking at a house, and we were really almost close, but we decided we're about 5 years too young.
Yeah, I remember you said this is a place that you all built for your future selves. So that's neat. Thanks for sharing about your father. Do you think that, if he saw this place, he would feel proud?
Oh, yeah. He saw it before he passed away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was very proud, very impressed.
So, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it was. It was great.
Sounds like a family legacy.
Well, to me. Well,
thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Do you have questions? Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add at all?
No, I just think that this was the work of a great many people who really loved it. I mean, I laugh every time I come up because there's a tree next to the entrance that we moved the whole building because our real estate guy just loved that tree. And, so, yeah, and a lot, the lake was a runoff. This is on a hill.
Right.
And the Center for Wetlands at UF and the College of Engineering came and built a lake. And their students have monitored it. And there's a gator in it. And that's good or bad, but it's there.
As long as he doesn't show his face too often.
Exactly. As long as he doesn't eat anybody's little dog is really the thing that I worry about. So, there are lots and lots of choices here. If you get a tour, for example, there are apartments that open like any traditional apartment house into a closed hallway. So if you don't want to have rain and you don't want to have humidity and you can just live in your apartment. But out back, there are beautiful atrium apartments which open to the air with covering. And they're sort of much more modern, contemporary little city living, and they're green in the middle. And, you should take a look at them. They're very beautiful. And but you have a front and a back door, and you can open them. And so that appeals to one set of people, and other set of people wouldn't have that for anything in the world. So, it's just where your head is. We tried to build as much flexibility in as possible.
That's awesome. It seems like there are lots of options, lots of places you can be here, spend your time.
Yeah, there are.
Thank you. Well,
Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and everything you had to say.
We appreciate your interest.